The enslaved child who wrote his way into history. Olaudah Equiano. Before the British Empire ended its participation in the transatlantic slave trade, an African man who had experienced enslavement used his life story to confront the system. His name was Olaudah Equiano. According to his autobiography, Equiano was born around 1745 in Essaka, an Igbo-speaking community believed to have been in what is now southeastern Nigeria. He described a childhood filled with family, traditions, and community life. That childhood was violently taken from him. When Equiano was about 11 years old, kidnappers seized him and his sister while their parents were away. The children were separated, and Equiano was passed from one enslaver to another before reaching the African coast. There, he encountered the slave ship that would carry him across the Atlantic. Equiano later described his terror at seeing the vessel, the unbearable conditions below deck, the sickness, the deaths, and the despair among kidnapped Africans during the Middle Passage. He feared the European sailors intended to kill and eat him. After arriving in the Americas, Equiano was taken to Virginia and purchased by Royal Navy officer Michael Henry Pascal. Pascal forced the name Gustavus Vassa upon him, the name Equiano would use for much of his life. Equiano served aboard British naval vessels during the 7 Years' War. He learned seamanship, traveled extensively, and became literate, but education and faithful service did not protect him from being treated as property. Pascal eventually sold him to Captain James Doran, who in turn sold him to Robert King, a Quaker merchant in Montserrat. King allowed Equiano to engage in small-scale trading while continuing to profit from his labor. Equiano saved his earnings and, in 1766, purchased his freedom for £40, the price King had paid for him. Freedom on paper did not guarantee safety. As a black man in the Atlantic world, Equiano still faced the risk of kidnapping and re-enslavement. He nevertheless built a remarkable life as a sailor, merchant, explorer, author, and political organizer. In London, Equiano joined the Sons of Africa, a group of black abolitionists who wrote letters, organized campaigns, and demanded an end to the slave trade. He also helped draw public attention to the 1781 Zong massacre, in which the crew of a British slave ship threw more than 130 enslaved Africans into the sea so the ship's owners could attempt to collect insurance money. In 1789, Equiano published The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olaudah Equiano, or Gustavus Vassa, the African, written by himself. Those final words mattered. Written by himself. At a time when Europeans regularly claimed that Africans lacked intelligence, civilization, or humanity, Equiano spoke in his own voice. He described African society, the Middle Passage, enslavement, religion, commerce, and his journey toward freedom. His book was not merely a personal memoir. It was evidence. Equiano traveled throughout Britain and Ireland, promoting the book and speaking against the slave trade. His narrative became a bestseller, reaching 9 editions during his lifetime and strengthening the abolitionist movement by allowing readers to confront slavery through the testimony of someone who had endured it. British Library. Equiano married Susannah Cullen, an Englishwoman, in 1792. They had 2 daughters, Anna Maria and Joanna. He died in London on March 31, 1797, 10 years before Britain passed the Slave Trade Act of 1807. He did not live to witness that victory, but his voice helped prepare the ground on which it was won. The British Parliament recognizes Equiano as an active opponent of the slave trade and an important leader within London's black community. UK Parliament. A historical question remains about his birthplace. 2 18th-century records identify Equiano as having been born in South Carolina, prompting some scholars to question the African childhood described in his autobiography. Other historians defend his account, arguing that the surviving evidence does not settle the matter. The debate should be acknowledged rather than concealed. What is not disputed is that Equiano lived under enslavement, purchased his freedom, became one of the most influential black writers of the 18th century and used his voice against human trafficking. The child once treated as property became the author of his own identity. The name forced upon him could not erase the one he reclaimed. The system that tried to silence him could not stop his words from crossing oceans, generations, and centuries. Olaudah Equiano did more than tell the story of his life. He forced the empire to hear the humanity of the people it had placed in chains. Descendants of the Taken Ones, recovering the stories history tried to bury. To support the channel, please click the like button and subscribe to receive new videos.